Hi everybody, this is Noelle from Petiti Garden Centers. We're here at our Oakwood Village location and it is what's in store for June. And we always like to start out this month talking about National Perennial Gardening Month. So June is when, oh gosh, it seems like the perennial garden explodes. We've kind of gone past the spring ephemeral plant material, and you know they definitely got us excited for the gardening season, but now we can really get in there and garden with perennials. We're in our sunnier areas and you can tell there's so much color here. The Meadow Sages, this one is Caradonna. Caradonna is probably our tallest meadow sage, probably around the 30-inch mark with her. Very, very dark purple stems and purple bracts, and then really beautiful deep purple flowers. So she really is a gorgeous meadow sage, or salvia numerosa. And then that's coupled with this beautiful yellow yarrow, and I think the yellow yarrow is really the most hardy out there in the landscape. This is Moonshine. Moonshine's just a classic. These two together, awesome combination plants to put in sun, no problem. They can take very hot, dry locations once established. They can also be cut back several times through the growing season, so you can keep bringing on more flowers, spike flowers obviously, and also those beautiful bright yellow heads of yarrow, both very deer resistant. So keep that in mind. And then of course, coupling with a daisy. This is Real Glory Daisy, beautiful doubled petals, still have that big yellow center on them. Long cutting stems, but really good repeat blooming here with Real Glory. I know we've shown this before, but it's a fantastic variety. Those three in combination, no problem again with the deer, no problem with the heat. Again, once established, great. And then to continue adding on and even bringing on more pollinators even, try some of your Gaillardia. This is native blanket flower. I know we've talked about these guys before, but they're nice because they're a nice compact daisy. They do very well in those really well-drained spots, maybe down by the mailbox or a bed that you've decided to make more of a rock garden or a drier area garden. These do wonderfully well, especially when they have good drainage around them. So try Gaillardia. This is the Spin Top series that we have two varieties here. Copper Sun is here, a little bit larger, more red is showing on this flower, and the petals are fluted. So they're almost like a hummingbird could come in there and just put their nose right into that petal flute. And then this one down here is, I lost it, Taylor. It's Spin Top, but it's red something. Red Starburst. There we go. Taylor will show you the name, but that one's beautiful. A little bit more yellow on the tips with that red eye. So I love it. And it's coupled with one of the shorter varieties of Nepeta or catmint. And I'm starting to see catmint everywhere in the landscape, and I think it's because it is just such an easy plant to grow. Catmint are in the mint family. They do have a very fresh, minty smell to them, but they produce these beautiful periwinkle, bluish purple flowers. They're small, but very, very profuse. So they look like they're in flower for weeks and weeks and weeks through the growing season. And even when they fade, they still hold on to their color. So they're a long blooming perennial for us. And again, the blanket flower, the Nepeta, the daisies, the yarrow and salvia, all great deer resistant plants. So don't be afraid to mix those, in the garden, in the perennial garden in the sun. Now we're just starting to come into Delphinium. And Delphinium are really starting to just fill out and bud up for us. I've got two varieties here. I've got Guardian White that's just budding, and then also I've got a deep purple back here, and Taylor will write the name because I don't remember which series it is. But needless to say, folks, with Delphinium, they are meant for the sun, but if you can put them in a protected area where they don't get a lot of wind, that is going to help you in the long run and help its longevity in the garden. Also, if it's in a protected spot, hopefully we'll get a little bit more heat through the growing season. These guys are a short-lived perennial, so if you've tried Delphinium before and you think, gosh, they don't last long for me, they don't really last long for anybody. So just so you're aware of that, they are kind of short-lived, but well worth those beautiful tall spires of flowers. And of course, the blues, the purples, the whites that, you know, really you can't find anywhere else in other flowering perennials. So they really are well worth it. Make sure you stake them if you don't have them in a protected area, well-drained area as well. And they're coupled with one of those beautiful dark leaf Heuchera or coral bells. This is obsidian, and obsidian just gets darker and darker and darker as you go through the season. So you have kind of that burgundy purple right now. You see a little bit of violet. It's just starting to push up its little coral bells, which will be white. But that foliage will just get a darker purple, almost like an eggplant purple. It's so pretty. Okay, this last combo I'm going to have Taylor show you another yarrow. This is Apricot Delight. Beautiful ferny foliage on this plant. Lots of fragrance. Again, all of your yarrows will. They'll all dry very well. You can use them as cut flowers. They really do a nice job in the garden. I know a lot of gardeners are a little bit weary of yarrow because they can travel. They can, but not like you can't control them. Just keep on digging around. Make sure you're cultivating around the plant. You remove some of the offshoots or what have you. Go ahead and give them to a neighbor or a friend, and they'll really enjoy it. And then this one's coupled with this bright kind of bluish purple Veronica. It's a beautiful color, very similar to the Caradonna salvia, but these guys are going to be shorter. This is Veronique dark blue, and boy, that combo with the apricot pinky color and the dark purpley blue, it's just beautiful. It'd be gorgeous, again, in sunny areas. Now we're gonna walk around the corner here because one of my favorite perennial families is just starting to really pop open, and it's the Coreopsis family. And we've talked about Coreopsis before. Again, great pollinator plant, awesome long blooming perennial, deer resistant. They just do such a great job for us out in the garden, and they can take a lot of abuse. Again, I always talk about once they're established. So that first year, getting them in the garden, making sure you're watering, 1 inch, 1 time per week deeply, making sure you're feeding them when you're supposed to. And we always talk about spring feeding and midsummer feeding with perennials with plant tone, and you're ready to go. So I'm going to have Taylor pan over here, and these big yellow pom-poms are golden sphere Coreopsis. It is a shorty. It's a grandiflora variety, kind of thicker leafed, if you will. But oh my gosh, those pom-pom flowers are absolutely gorgeous. Cut them. Use them in small little bud vases. They're lovely. This variegated variety is Tequila Sunrise. I do like this variety because of the variegated leaves, so at least you get a little bit of texture and color with your foliage when they're not in flower. Do be aware that I like these better in a protected area as well. Sometimes we don't see these come back as well as the other Coreopsis. I think it has a lot to do with that variegated foliage. It needs a little bit more protection over winter. Now there is one, this one is the Sunfire, and Sunfire, if you look close to it, it is a compact variety. But look at that dark golden yellow, and then it has that beautiful burgundy eye on it. So that's a beautiful variety as well. Very, these buds are huge on this plant right now. They're really going to pop out. Some of the fern leaf varieties, you can tell they're not quite there yet. They really are starting to bud. Obviously beautiful foliage texture, but just not flowering just yet. But this one at the end, I absolutely love. This is Jethro Tall. And Jethro Tall also has a fluted petal, kind of like what we were talking about with the Gaillardia spin top Copper Sun. It has kind of this curved petal here and really cool big golden yellow flowers, as you can see, and a great variety for us. So we love that one too. You can plant these along with everything else I've mentioned in the sun, no problem. And then I'm going to have Taylor show you this really quick. It's just starting to come out. This is a hardy chrysanthemum. So we've been talking the last few years about how fall mum's hardiness has not been as good as it was, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Breeders have really made the mums more easy to grow, very compact, what have you, but they don't winter over as well as we'd like. This one is a hardy chrysanthemum, a true chrysanthemum. This is yellow quill, and it's part of the Mammoth series, just so you know. They are daisy mums, so they do have that yellow eye and then the petals around. And with yellow quill, it's a real thin petal, and that has like a little spoon tip at the end, okay? Really cool, but they're starting to bud up and look really nice as well. And we have a pink magenta variety too. So maybe Taylor will show you guys a little bit later on that one too. I wanted to show you one more perennial plant for the sun. This is a new variety for us this year. This is Rock and Grow Boogie Woogie Sedum. And this sedum plant, you can tell, very, very low prostrate growing, definitely a ground cover type sedum. Doesn't get very tall at all. You're looking at maybe 4 inches when it starts to flower, and maybe about 24 inches when it fills out. So it's not aggressive growing at all. But look at this variegated foliage. So when this plant is up and out in spring, you always have something to look at all the way through the growing season. It gets covered up by snow, that's fine, and dies back. But my gosh, 3 seasons of really good foliage color and texture. And then later this month into July, what you'll get is you'll get these little yellow star-like flowers, which are always really good for the bees. They love the sedum family when it's blooming. So mid-season bloomer on this one, but think about Rock and Grow Boogie Woogie if you need some texture out there, especially in hot, sunny, drier areas. It can take part shade too, so underneath trees, that would work nicely as well. We're over in the shade area in the perennial department, and so we wanted to, throw in a shade combination since we showed you so much up in the sun perennial combination. Now the shade plants are really starting to fill up. Like we showed you earlier, the obsidian coral bell was starting to, bud up as well. But the shade plants, it takes them a little bit longer to get that sun energy to really start blooming for you. So the astilbe will start blooming in June typically. Coral bells will start blooming as well. And so you start to get, a little bit more color other than those spring, ephemerals, like I said, in the shade. So right here we have a really pretty combination. It is ostrich fern, which is this beautiful light chartreusey green fern. And it really does stay a lighter green in the shade garden, so it's nice. You get those variations of greens, and this one's kind of on that yellow side, if you will. So tall ostrich ferns can get, 3 to 4 foot in our gardens. Really good as far as deer resistance is concerned, and it's really most of our ferns. The only one I've really ever had an issue was with Japanese painted fern when they were little and immature. They would come over and nibble on that, but once it filled out and it was protected a little bit, it does fine now. Down right below it and behind it, I do have 2 coral bells. This is frosted violet, real pretty, dark silvery and purple foliage, gorgeous. And it's a little bit bigger, I should say habit-wise, so your foliage is a little bit taller, so it could be like a middle of the border type coral bell, right around the 20-inch mark for that one. And then peach flambe is in front, so I always love introducing that kind of reddish copper sort of orange into the shade garden. It just really draws your eye, especially when you have a lot of greens and blues and darker purples. That kind of goes back into the background, and that coppery orange kind of pops out in the foreground. And then we have this really cool new astilbe. We're waiting for it to come up and start to flower here, but this is called Dark Side of the Moon. Check out that foliage. It's almost like a burgundy copper foliage as well. And it's not as cut leaf or ferny leaf as some of the other astilbe, but it still has a really good amount of fuzz and hair on the foliage. So your astilbes are one of your best, again, foliage and flowering plants in the shade that have really good dew resistance, and they can take fairly moist areas. So try Dark Side of the Moon astilbe, and hopefully we'll show you a flower here once we get one. And then I also love the Brunnera, and I'm always trying to show you this, but the Brunnera, this is Jack Frost. Beautiful heart-shaped foliage, great texture with all the other ferny textures out there in the shade garden. It produces those little blue forget-me-not flowers in the spring, but they have since been cut back. And look at that, just gorgeous silvery foliage. So again, talk about reflected light, getting more light into the shade garden. Use your silvers, use your chartreuse greens, and that'll give you a little bit more light. For a quick nursery combo, I love this. And on a cloudy day, we can catch a lot of these colors a little bit better. But I love the Nishiki willow. So this is gonna be what they call a mottled willow, where you have green, white, and pink all on the foliage here, kind of as a backdrop, but then putting the double knockout rose in front, and that cherry pinky red, really you can see it kind of reflected in that pinky foliage of the Nishiki willow. I just love it. That is a beautiful combo right there, these two. And if you wanted to, I have bloomstruck hydrangeas right in front. Now, bloomstruck are part of the Endless Summer series, and bloomstruck is a full mop head, nice and compact, very dark stems on this one. So there's some nice burgundy stems there, dark green leaves, and then that nice beautiful blue color with a little bit of limey green in the eye. Now, bloomstruck, most of your Endless Summer can take some sun. We always want to see 6 or more hours of sunlight on the knockout roses, of course. And then with the willows, to get good, really good modeling and coloration on the foliage, you do want to see them in 6 or more hours of sunlight. But I'm going to tell you, if you put these in a little bit lower light level, let's say a part shade condition, and put the hydrangeas in as well, no problem. You can really do that. So if you're on that 6 hour, right at the cusp of it, this would be a really, really pretty combo for you out in the garden. We're out in the Weigela, and oh my gosh, with the heat at the end of May, everything just exploded out here. Beautiful foliage color. We've talked about Weigela before. You can really plant them in full sun to part shade. You're going to get better foliage color in the full sun, but they're dew resistant. They have beautiful trumpeted flowers, usually in the pinks. There are a few reds out there that are beautiful, and whites as well, but great hummingbird attractant. And just a great foliage plant, I think, out in the landscape. Some of them can get, 4 or 5 foot tall. Some can be much more compact. So it just kind of depends. But if you need a plant that's fairly easy care out there, flowering, really just does its job out in the landscape, try Weigela. There's a lot to choose from. We're going to show you Wine and Roses right here is a classic variety. Wine and Roses is one of the taller burgundy foliage, and then also a dark pink flower. Wine and Rose has also been improved over the last couple years. So beautiful, clean foliage, absolutely gorgeous. And then I'm standing right next to White, which is a tuxedo. Tuxedo, this variety through here, the foliage starts green and will get a darker cast to it. And then having those white trumpets on a darker leaf, that's really pretty. It really stands out. The one next to it here, which if you're a fan of red, this is really close. This is Maroon Swoon. So it really is a beautiful kind of medium green leaf. And then look at those dark red flowers. It is covered in those red trumpets, so it is really nice. Very Fine Wine is a shorty, kind of a nice low mound for you. We've got foliage right now. I don't see any buds and flowering on that one just yet, so maybe this is going to be a little bit of a later bloomer for us. And then look at these pinks through here. This is Sonic Bloom Pure Pink. when you see the Sonic Bloom family, they are repeat bloomers on the Weigela. So Pure Pink is here. I have Pearl right next door to it. Pearl has a little bit of a yellow when it starts out, like it's a white flower with a yellow center. And then it really starts to fill out and kind of blush more pink, and the center turns pink too. So it's really pretty. It has some variable color in it. And then also Sonic Bloom Pink, which is a little bit more dark rosy, I meant to say. So needless to say, that one's great. And then this one, oh my gosh, this is Snippet Lime. And look at that foliage, really beautiful. Again, whenever you can get a chartreuse foliage, some beautiful sort of light pink, has a little bit of a lavender cast to the flower. Beautiful there, but when you contrast it with something that has that dark burgundy foliage, those two together are just absolutely gorgeous. And this is actually Midnight Wine Shine, which has been an improvement over Midnight Wine. Same habit, but really glossy bronze foliage here to that dark purple. So really, really beautiful. I love them. Now that we have made it into June, it's a really good time to plant tomatoes, okay? If you haven't done so already. If you have, that's fine, and you can start early, but the only thing is tomatoes really love the heat. So we kind of delay to plant them. And of course, when we're talking tomatoes, you always want to know the difference between an indeterminate and a determinate tomato. And indeterminate tomatoes are going to be vining tomatoes. They are going to be large plants that are going to need a lot of support as they grow up and they produce. And they will continually produce for you. So that means you want them to continually flower and continually grow and fill up the trellis or cage or what have you that you are using to support them, stakes, all those types of things. So with your indeterminate tomatoes, just watch. The indeterminates will get as much, if not more, suckering growth on them. So as they start to vine and grow, make sure that you're picking off the suckers, okay? And they're usually just little leaves. You know, when they're immature like this, we don't have too many suckers on them, but we have shown a video about that before, haven't we, Taylor? But so picking off the suckers right at the branch. It's just this little growth that grows between the crotch of the branch, and you pick that out. So keep an eye on those. So indeterminate types, your cherry tomatoes are typically indeterminate types where you can tell they're already, if you come out to Petitti's and you're looking at the tomato selection, they're already really, really filling up, starting to stretch and starting to grow pretty tall already, just because that's how they grow. They're vining types of tomatoes. Whereas you have a different type, a determinate type of tomato that when you look around should look pretty bushy, fairly compact, fairly thick stemmed, okay? And with your determinate type or bush type tomatoes, and they can be all different varieties, but what's great about the bush type is that you don't need as much support, but they are also really good for those of us that like to make salsa and canned tomatoes and all those types of things, because they produce a lot of tomatoes and yield all at the same time. So you're picking a lot at one time and really being able to use those at one point. So that's the big difference between indeterminate and determinate. It's definitely the way that they grow and also how often they produce. Now, don't get me wrong, determinate will continue to produce after you get that first big crop yield, if you will, but it won't be as large the second or third time that you get fruit on this plant. So be aware of that. So always check your labels. Make sure that you're reading to see if the plant is indeterminate. If you can't quite tell when they're all really little or determinate, you'll know, especially because it'll be labeled that way too. patio containers. So if you haven't gotten yours planted yet, of course, we have ready-made patio containers for you. Beautiful thrillers like this cypress. We love Prince Tut cypress here, or papyrus, however you like to say. Beautiful calibrachoas, petunias, as well. But, you know, so there's lots of different colors and varieties that you can put in containers that will do very well, you know, on the front porch, on the deck, where have you. And even if you don't have a lot of color in the landscape and you'd like to have some color, easy color, containers are perfect for that. Go ahead and just place them in the landscape. If you're, you know, landscaping later, or if you just don't really want to plant any shrubs or perennials, that's okay. You can always put colorful containers in that spot, no problem whatsoever. And again, you're always going to have sun and shade combos to choose from. So really, it doesn't matter what type of light that you are getting in the area. But lots of different mixed containers with spikes and cordylines as the thriller in the center. We love containers that have a mixture of petunias and calibrachoa and verbenas in them. They just make great combinations. And so, yeah, just lots of color to choose from. Now, Taylor wanted me to mention the dahlias because there are some beautiful, beautiful dahlias. These are actually more of an annual dahlia. They do produce small tubers. They're not the big, you know, large saucer types that are typically that you get the large tubers from, but they are gorgeous. And dahlias are one of your better sun plants that are deer resistant, that again, you can cut and use as a cut flower, and they will continue to repeat bloom. These annual varieties will. So check out all the beautiful colors here. And I'm gonna look really quick because I don't remember. We've got Paraiso, or it could be Paradiso, I don't know. It's an XXL variety, really pretty. This dark pink is lovely as well. There's some bicolors here. Look at this one. Oh my gosh. This one, Taylor, is Veracruz, extra, extra large Veracruz. I love it. And then look at the reds. Oh my gosh. Let me see if I can pull a red one out. This one's just starting, but it has beautiful yellow flares in it too. The red is called Cancun, very appropriately. Very cool. Okay, everybody, enjoy your June.